Experience. Sometimes you can't see what God is doing, but that doesn't mean he's not working. There are moments in life when everything feels uncertain, when doors close. Experience. When people walk away, when plans fall apart. But hear me, God's protection doesn't always look like peace. Sometimes his protection feels like pain. Experience. Yet even in the silence, even in the struggle, God is shielding you from dangers you can't see. Let's look at 7 powerful signs that God is protecting you from harm. Experience. Because even when you don't understand his plan, you can trust his hand. There are moments in life when you feel like you're stuck waiting. You've prayed, you've believed. Experience. You've done everything you thought you were supposed to do, yet nothing seems to move. Doors you were sure would open stay closed. Opportunities that looked so promising suddenly vanish. You start to wonder if you missed something, if God is displeased, or if you're being punished for some unseen mistake. Experience. But what if I told you that the delay you're facing is not a denial, it's divine protection? When God delays something, it's never because he's forgotten you. Experience. It's because he knows what's up ahead, and he's working out something far greater than what you can see right now. We often think of delay as wasted time. Experience. But in God's plan, delay is sacred time. It's the space where God rearranges the battlefield before he sends you forward. Experience. It's the season where he hides you in the shadow of his hand to shield you from what would have destroyed you if you had gone too soon. Experience. Think about this. There are storms that never reached you because God slowed your steps. There are traps that were already set, but God changed your schedule. Experience. There are people you wanted to meet, but God didn't let the connection happen because he saw what you didn't. You only see what's in front of you. Experience. But God sees the full timeline. You see the surface, he sees the depth. You see the now, he sees the eternal. And because he loves you, he sometimes says, not yet. We don't like that phrase, not yet. We want yes now. We live in a generation that runs on speed where delay feels like defeat. Experience. But God's timing isn't based on your impatience. It's based on his protection. He's not just managing your blessing, he's managing your safety. When God tells you to wait, it's because there's something he still needs to fix. Maybe in the situation, maybe in you, or maybe in both. Experience. There's something powerful about a waiting season. Waiting exposes what you truly believe about God. Anybody can worship when doors are flying open. But can you still praise when all the doors are locked? Anybody can declare faith when the blessing is in sight. Experience. But can you still trust when you're in the hallway of uncertainty? See, waiting builds faith muscle. It teaches you how to depend on God's presence more than your plans. Experience. It reminds you that his timing is never off. It's precise, perfect, and protective. Let me remind you, every delay has a purpose. Experience. God will never hold something back from you unless it could harm you, hinder you, or distract you. Experience. Sometimes the very thing you're praying for is not ready for you, or you're not ready for it. God may be preparing you for something that requires a stronger version of you. Experience. One that can handle the blessing without being broken by it. He may be strengthening your patience, your humility. Experience, or your discernment, because he knows that where he's taking you, those qualities will be necessary for survival. Think of Joseph. He had a dream as a teenager that he would lead nations, but he didn't reach the palace until years later. Why? Because the dream was ready, but Joseph wasn't yet. Experience. The delay wasn't punishment, it was protection. God had to mature him in the pit before he could promote him in the palace. Experience. The delay was divine because it aligned Joseph's character with his calling. Maybe that's what God is doing for you. Maybe that delay in your career. Experience. That relationship that didn't work, that opportunity that vanished. It's not the devil blocking you, it's God protecting you. Experience. If he had allowed it to happen when you wanted, it might have become the very thing that drew you away from him. What you call delay, God calls mercy. You see, experience God's no or wet is just as loving as his wes. His delay is his way of saying, experience. I love you too much to let you walk into something that looks like a blessing, but carries hidden danger. He's not trying to frustrate you. He's trying to preserve you. Experience. The delay is not a detour from your destiny. It's part of the design that leads you there safely. So the next time you face a delay, don't panic. Don't complain. Experience. Don't let discouragement convince you that God is silent. Instead, lift your hands and thank him for what didn't happen. Praise him for the closed doors. Experience. For the opportunities that failed, for the paths that were blocked at. Because every not yet is a sign that God is still guarding your future. You may not understand it now. Experience. But one day you'll look back and realize that if it had happened when you wanted, it would have broken you. You'll thank God for the seasons that seemed still. Experience. For they were the seasons he was building your strength. The delay was not wasted. It was woven into your destiny. God's protection doesn't always come as a visible shield. Experience. Sometimes it comes as divine timing. So hold your peace and trust his pace. Experience. When God says wet, it's not because he's late. It's because he's on time in ways you can't see yet. Every divine delay carries hidden purpose, hidden mercy, experience, and hidden love. And when the time is right, the door will open, not by your striving, but by his perfect protection. Sometimes in life, we experience a sense of unease that we cannot explain. It may come as a subtle whisper in our spirit, a gnawing feeling in our gut, experience, or a persistent thought that something isn't quite right. At first, we might dismiss it as paranoia or overthinking, but this is often God's way of speaking to us. Experience. That discomfort, that inner warning, is not a coincidence. It is divine protection at work. God has placed within us a spirit of discernment. Experience, a God-given intuition that helps us navigate life's unseen dangers. When we learn to recognize and respond to these signals, we align ourselves with his protection and guidance. Experience. Life is full of situations that look harmless or even attractive on the surface, but conceal hidden risks. People we trust, opportunities we pursue, experience, and decisions we make all carry potential consequences that are not immediately visible. God, in his infinite wisdom, knows the paths that could lead to harm, heartbreak, experience, or spiritual compromise. He communicates with us through subtle signs, nudges, and warnings designed to steer us away from danger. These warnings may feel uncomfortable, experience, inconvenient, or even confusing, but they serve a crucial purpose. They are keeping us safe from harm we cannot yet see. Experience. Discomfort often appears when we are about to make a decision or take a step that seems right according to our own understanding, but not according to God's. Experience. Perhaps it's a business deal that seems profitable, a relationship that seems promising, or a path that appears to offer success. On the surface, everything looks favorable. Experience. Yet something inside whispers caution. That uneasiness is God's protective voice, guiding us away from what could ultimately harm us. He is not trying to frustrate us. Experience. He is shielding us from outcomes that could damage our lives, our character, or our faith. Responding to this divine discomfort requires attentiveness and humility. Experience. We cannot always rely on our emotions or human logic alone. We must cultivate a sensitivity to God's voice within us. Prayer, reflection, experience, and scripture study are tools that help us discern when unease is a warning from God rather than mere doubt or fear. As we strengthen our relationship with him, experience, our spiritual intuition becomes sharper, allowing us to recognize danger before it manifests. The more we learn to listen, the more we experience his protective hand in our lives. Experience. History and scripture are filled with examples of God using discomfort to protect his people. Consider the story of Jonah, experience, who was reluctant to follow God's instruction to go to Nineveh. Jonah's inner struggle and eventual flight were part of God's larger plan, redirecting him toward obedience and away from the consequences of disobedience. God often works in ways that appear uncomfortable or inconvenient. Experience. But his ultimate goal is our protection and alignment with his will. Just as Jonah had to listen to God's guidance, so must we pay attention to the stirrings in our spirit. Experience. It is also important to recognize that discomfort can come through relationships and circumstances. Sometimes God will place us in situations that feel awkward, challenging, experience, or restrictive, not to punish us, but to protect us from harm we cannot yet see. Certain people may enter our lives to serve as warnings, experience, while certain situations may create boundaries that prevent us from walking into danger. These experiences, though uncomfortable, are evidence of God's active protection. Experience. They remind us that his care extends beyond what we can observe and that his love often works behind the scenes. Ignoring these warnings can have serious consequences. Experience. When we override that inner sense of unease, we risk stepping into situations that compromise our well-being, our values, or our spiritual growth. God's protection is proactive. Experience, not reactive. By listening and responding to his nudges, we avoid harm before it occurs. Discomfort, then, is not merely a feeling to suppress or a signal to ignore. Experience. It is a message from a loving Father who desires to keep us safe. Developing sensitivity to this divine guidance requires patience and practice. Experience. It means learning to differentiate between fear and a warning, between human anxiety and God-given discernment. It also requires trust. Trust that God's protection is real. Experience. That his timing is perfect and that his wisdom surpasses our understanding. When we act in alignment with his guidance, even when it contradicts our own desires or plans, Experience. We position ourselves under his shield of protection. In everyday life, this may manifest in small ways: a hesitation to sign a contract, experience, a pause before entering a social situation, or an instinct to reconsider a decision. Each moment of attentiveness, each choice to honor that discomfort, experience, strengthens our connection with God and demonstrates our reliance on his protection. Over time, we begin to recognize patterns and signals. Experience. Understanding that God's whispers of caution are not obstacles. Ultimately, discomfort as divine warning is a profound expression of God's care. Experience. It reminds us that we are never alone, that he is aware of the unseen dangers around us, and that his protection is active and intentional. Experience. By learning to listen to the stirrings of our spirit, to heed the unease he places within us, we embrace his guidance and safeguard our lives from harm. Experience. This spiritual sensitivity is not just a protective measure. It is an invitation to deepen our relationship with God, to trust his wisdom, experience, and to walk confidently under the shelter of his care. When the next wave of discomfort comes, remember that it is not a sign of weakness or fear. Experience. It is a sign that God is watching, protecting, and guiding you away from danger. Trust the inner nudges, honor the unease, and let God's protective hand lead you. In doing so, experience, you will discover that his guidance, even when uncomfortable, is always for your good. Sometimes in life, we are faced with closed doors, opportunities that seem promising, experience, paths that appeared wide open, or relationships we hoped would grow. But for reasons we cannot understand, they shut in our faces. At first, experience, closed doors can feel like disappointment, rejection, or even failure. We may question ourselves, blame others, or wonder if God has forgotten us. But in truth, experience, closed doors are not always signs of denial. More often, they are God's protection at work, shielding us from paths that could lead to harm, distraction, experience, or delay in his plan for our lives. It's easy to assume that an open door is always a blessing and a closed door is always a setback. Experience. But God's perspective is far wider than ours. What looks like a door closing may actually be a fence keeping us safe, a wall protecting us from dangers we cannot see. Experience. Sometimes the things we desperately want could lead us into financial ruin, relational heartbreak, moral compromise, or spiritual danger. God sees the full picture. Experience, and in his love, he intervenes, even when it's painful or confusing to us. A closed door may be his way of saying, experience, I love you too much to let you go this way. Consider how often we pursue what seems like the right path, only to discover later that it was not meant for us. Experience. A job that promised advancement may have led to ethical compromise. A relationship that appeared perfect may have led to heartbreak. Experience. A business venture that looked lucrative may have been financially risky. God's intervention, often invisible at first, experience, keeps us from walking into consequences we are not prepared to face. That closed door, while frustrating at the moment, is a sign of divine protection. Closed doors also teach us patience and reliance on God. When a door shuts, it creates space to reassess, pray, and listen for God's guidance. It forces us to pause, experience, reflect, and seek his wisdom rather than rushing forward impulsively. There is tremendous spiritual growth in learning to trust God's timing. Experience. In the waiting and in the uncertainty, he is not absent. He is actively working behind the scenes, aligning circumstances, redirecting our steps. Experience. And preparing us for what is truly meant for us. We often forget that God is not only concerned with what we want, but with what we truly need. We may desire comfort, recognition, or ease, but God desires growth, protection, and eternal impact. Experience. A closed door may prevent us from taking the easy route that ultimately would have short-circuited his purposes in our lives. Experience. He may be redirecting us to a path that requires more faith, more patience, and more trust, but will ultimately bring a greater reward. Closed doors are often gateways to better, experience, safer, and more aligned opportunities than we could have imagined on our own. There is also a relational dimension to closed doors. Sometimes experience. God closes doors to protect us from people who would harm us, distract us, or lead us away from our calling. Not every opportunity involves the right people. Experience. And not every connection is meant to last. When relationships or partnerships fall through, it may not be rejection. It may be divine intervention. Experience. God's closed doors often protect our hearts, our integrity, and our spiritual walk. He removes what is harmful so he can bring what is helpful and life-giving in its place. Experience. Scripture reminds us repeatedly that God's timing and his control over circumstances are perfect. What we perceive as a delay or a closed door is often a form of mercy. Experience. Every closed door carries with it a hidden blessing or a protection we cannot yet understand. God's perspective is eternal, and he is always working for our good. Experience. Even when we cannot see it, Closed doors are not the end. They are a redirection towards something better, something safer, and something aligned with his perfect plan. Experience. The key is to respond to closed doors with faith, not frustration. Rather than pounding on doors that will not open, we must trust that God is guiding us to doors that will. Experience. We must maintain hope and look for the opportunities he is placing before us, even if they are not immediately obvious. Closed doors are an invitation to prayer, discernment, experience, and trust. They are reminders that God is in control, that his protection is active, and that his love for us is unwavering. Experience. Learning to embrace closed doors as protective measures changes our perspective. Instead of seeing rejection or disappointment, we see divine guidance. Instead of seeing obstacles, we see opportunities for growth. Instead of feeling abandoned, we recognize God's care. The next time a door closes in your life, pause and consider what God may be protecting you from. Reflect on the mercy, the foresight, and the love that lies behind that closed door. It may be hard to understand at first, but with faith, patience, and prayer, you will see that God's closed doors are not blocks. They are shields. Closed doors are not the enemy. They are signs of divine protection. They remind us that God is intimately aware of our lives and is actively guarding our steps. They teach us to trust, to wait, and to seek his wisdom. And they prepare us for the doors that are truly meant to open. Doors that will align with his plan, preserve our well-being, and lead us into the abundant life he has promised. So when a door closes, remember it's not a dead end. It's a detour orchestrated by a loving God who will never let you walk into harm. Sometimes people leave our lives suddenly without explanation, and it hurts. Friends we thought would always be there disappear. Relationships that seemed stable end abruptly. Even people we trusted with our deepest thoughts and plans may walk away. It can feel like abandonment, betrayal, or rejection, and it's natural to grieve. But what if I told you that people leaving your life can actually be a form of God's protection? What if the separations that feel painful are really shields keeping you from harm you cannot yet see? God's ways are often higher than our ways. And his perspective spans the full length of our lives, not just the present moment. We see only what's in front of us, but he sees the trajectory, the hidden motives, and the possible consequences of every relationship. Some people, though they seem close, may carry influence that would lead us into compromise, distraction, or danger. Others may bring conflict or negativity that erodes our faith, peace, or purpose. When God allows people to leave, it is not a sign that he is angry or absent. It is a sign that he is actively protecting us. Consider the idea of pruning in nature. A gardener cuts away branches not because the tree is unloved, but because those branches may hinder growth or carry disease. In the same way, God sometimes removes people from our lives to allow us to grow, flourish, and fulfill our destiny. The absence of certain individuals creates space for new relationships, opportunities, and experiences that align with his plan. This is a form of divine protection, even though it can feel painful in the moment. It is important to understand that not everyone who leaves is an enemy. Some departures are acts of mercy. They prevent us from being entangled in situations that could lead to spiritual harm, emotional damage, or distraction from our calling. God sees things we cannot. He knows the hidden motives, the potential dangers, and the subtle influences that could negatively affect our lives. When he removes certain people, he is shielding us from consequences we cannot yet anticipate. Sometimes people leave because they were never meant to be part of our long-term journey. Their presence may have served a temporary purpose, teaching us lessons, testing our faith, or helping us discover who we truly are. Once that purpose is fulfilled, God orchestrates their departure. This doesn't diminish their value in our lives, but it reminds us that our security and direction do not depend on human beings. They depend on God. When we learn to trust him with the comings and goings of people in our lives, we are able to see his protection rather than focusing solely on loss. Painful as it may be, people leaving can also reveal God's priorities for us. When doors close and people walk away, it redirects our focus to him. We begin to rely less on human support and more on divine provision. We are reminded that God is the ultimate sustainer of our lives. The one who watches over us and keeps us from harm. Our relationships, though important, are not the ultimate source of safety or blessing. God is. And when he allows people to exit our lives, it can be an invitation to grow deeper in him, to seek his wisdom, and to strengthen our faith. It is also crucial to understand timing in these situations. The departure of people is rarely random. It is often perfectly timed. Experience. God removed some influences before the consequences of their presence could reach us. Perhaps a business partner would have led you into financial trouble. Experience. Perhaps a friend would have encouraged you down a morally compromising path. Perhaps a romantic relationship would have taken you away from God's purpose for your life. Experience. God's protection often comes in ways we cannot yet perceive, and one of the clearest ways is by orchestrating separation instead of dwelling on loss or questioning God's love. Experience. We can choose to trust his sovereignty. People leaving does not diminish your worth, and it does not mean you are abandoned. It is an expression of God's mercy, his guidance, experience, and his foresight. Each person who exits your life may be creating space for something greater, safer, and more aligned with his plan. While the pain may be real, experience, so is the protection. When you experience the departure of people, take heart. Reflect on the ways their absence may be preserving your heart, your integrity, experience, and your spiritual journey. Recognize that God's love is active, not passive. He is constantly working to keep you safe, sometimes by removing influences that would harm you. Experience. The people who leave are not always losses. They are often shields. Ultimately, trusting God through the exit of people strengthens our faith and deepens our reliance on him. Experience. We learn that true security does not come from human relationships, but from the hand of God. His protection is not always visible, and it may not feel comfortable, but it is constant. The next time someone walks away, pause and thank God for his unseen shield. What may feel like abandonment could very well be divine preservation. Experience, a protective measure from a loving Father who knows what we need before we even realize it. People leaving your life is not a curse. It is often a blessing in disguise. Experience. God's hand of protection is at work, guiding, shielding, and preparing you for what lies ahead. Trust him even when it hurts, because his love is greater than any loss, and his protection is more powerful than any danger you may face.